Hi, Sifu, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
It's great to be back with you again. This is our second podcast episode, and I thought today we could talk about time. And for our audience, this is Sifu Richard Sims, and we're just going to have a conversation about time, his perspective on it,
Yeah.
best uses of it, and any other topic he wants to cover. And this is inspiration only.
It really is about inspiration. And also, there's a famous saying in Chinese philosophical poetry is that the only way to test the true character of a person, and you can apply it to martial arts training, a long road tests the strength of a horse. You can see a good horse, he can endure the long road. That basically, it's all about time. Martial art training is just an accumulation of time and effort. And so related is the patience. And it's very important because just the famous saying again, a journey of 1,000 miles in the start of the first step. And you have to walk through the journey very slowly. And for time, for most of the serious martial artists, we don't talk about days, we don't talk about months, we don't talk about a year, we talk about decades. And the training itself can be easily explained in just the Western saying, just like a bottle of fine wine, Kung Fu will mature with time. You cannot hurry Kung Fu. I would like to emphasize the importance of time. Effort. Time is the essence of the whole thing. Remember Stephen Wilson, time is everything. Only time can tell. Good or bad, right or wrong, it's only time. Time is always the best judgment.
Yeah, notice that there are quite a few lessons about time and the way to use time and to get the best out of the time that you have. Could you share some of those lessons that come directly from Kung Fu that a person might want to apply to their everyday life?
Yeah. And I try not to joke about this. Lots of times you heard about people, a simple thing is one of those advanced techniques such as iron palm training. You talk about iron palm training and the Qigong training. And I remember years ago, and someone wrote a book and it says the iron palm in 30 days. And when I read about that, I said, it is impossible. Because the conditioning of your palm and the consistency and discipline and just ongoing. And I won't be surprised it would take over 20 and sometimes you're still not able to see results. And you talk about 30 days, it's almost impossible.
Maybe just the foundation or technique, but
Yeah.
actually building.
Yeah, you put in the foundation, you learn how to do it. But learning how to do it is very different than succeed in the iron palm training. Yeah, because and when I read about that book, I said, no, that's not possible.
I remember one day you told us that I can teach you everything in 6 months.
Yeah.
But to master it takes a lifetime.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is. And in any form of arts, lots of times people say Kung Fu is very complicated. No, it is not. Complicated is for a person who doesn't have the patience. You just have to put the time in it. And that's just one thing I have to say. Steve Wilson, you've been with me in the past over decades now. You know that what it takes. And so this is a proving example talking about how time, in essence, as far as the training goes, that is the major element of patience.
And that kind of brings us to the core meaning of Kung Fu itself, the accumulation of time and effort.
Yeah.
And that could be anything. I remember you telling us that anything can be Kung Fu that takes a long time and a lot of effort.
Absolutely, because like I said many times, you in 6 months you might learn how to do it, but to do it with results, it really takes a lifetime. It doesn't even matter, what, and Lots of times people ask me questions about what about different styles in external, internal, like one of the famous is the Northern and Southern Shaolin style, and the Wing Chun, the Hung Gar, and the internal like the Bagua, the Xing Yi, and all those, any one of those, if you're very serious about it, it's going to be the lifetime. It's a lifetime effort. I just couldn't see anyone can do it within 30 days or 90 days. It's just not possible. And that tells you how important time into the training itself. And you're talking about the time, which is good because I try to answer the question is that Kung Fu to us is a way of life. It's not just some movement, some exercise, or some self-defense technique and all that. No. Itself is a way of life. So that's what you were saying, that you try to apply the principle, the philosophy into life. You can tell that, yeah, the wisdom of Kung Fu.
So we're always doing
it's a long, yeah, it's a long, long way. And that's why when you talk to a everyday Chinese person, and he'll tell you, oh, yeah, Kung Fu, that takes a long time. Anybody would tell you that. Yeah.
Do you think time changes its meaning between as you get older, or do you see a difference between how people see time when they're young as opposed to when they get a little bit older?
Yes, because as an older person, you know that whatever you want to accomplish, it's not necessarily Kung Fu, it's just anything. Say for instance, music, like painting, like any art. That's why in the Western world they always say that, well, life is short and art is long. What does that mean? That means any form of art, it just takes a lifetime. And there's no, what we call, no destination. Very different. The struggle itself in learning Kung Fu is an end by itself. It's not an end. It's not like me, even partially being Russian educated, we oftentimes put a time frame on it for certain things. In 4 years, you got a bachelor degree, and a few more years, you get a master degree, and in 6 more years, you get a PhD, or whatever the case may be. But in Kung Fu, there's no such thing. There's no limit. It's just the water, it just keep on coming. It won't stop. Time is so many stories. And so many, I would say, philosophical approach by the Chinese. They oftentimes use time to emphasize how important that is.
And speaking of stories, I remember a story of you telling us about the man in the mountain.
Yeah.
And how he extends time essentially through the next generation by passing on the effort and ideas on to the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a very famous story in Stephen Wilson. You just happened, they call it the foolish Chinese man. I guess we're all a foolish Chinese man now. The story started with, we call him just a man from China. He just happened to have this house, and this house is just situated behind the mountain. It's just not good for, they said, good for feng shui, not good for anything. Because every day you open the door, you see the mountain. So one day he decided that he's going to move the mountain. So what he did is that he get a wheelbarrow and then just a little shovel, just go to the mountain and slowly just a shovel with a little dirt and then to move it to the other part, the other side of the house. Then there's a neighbor, he called him the wise guy. The wise guy coming in is just laughing laugh at him. Well, you're not joking, are you? Like, he said, no, I'm very serious. He said, it's impossible for you to use this little shovel and little thing by yourself and move the mountain. I cannot even see the top of the mountain. And the foolish Chinese man says, yes, I can. And then the wise man says, how? So that's the time that, the foolish Chinese man and tell them about the time concept. He pointed like there's a little house down the street. And he talked to the wise man, you see that little house over there? I said, yeah, I saw the little house. It's been there for a while. And do you know who lives there? He said, no, I really don't know. My son lives there. Then the wise man, what has it to do with you move the mountain? I don't get it. Because what we're talking about is the concept of time. And time, that means persistence. That means patience. That means discipline. I'm going to keep on doing this. I know my time is very limited. I don't know if I live at 80 years old, 100 years old. I'm an old man now. You give me another 40 years, I know what you said is right, because it's impossible for me to move that mountain. But you don't know one thing. I understand about patience. I understand about discipline. I understand about persistency. And this is all the major elements in practicing Kung Fu. The day I die, the young man down there living in that house will come and take it over. And the wise man said, oh, I see. And then he will keep on doing what I'm doing now. And I don't know how long will it take, because he has only one life. So by the time my son dies, then my grandson will take over. And there's no end there. So one day, this mountain will be totally removed, be gone, because I don't know how many grandkids I have. And the wise man start to understand about what he was talking about. And let's get back to the major thing. It's about time. Time is the major ingredient, major element to practice Kung Fu. Without time, that means no patience and no persistence. No, you cannot learn Kung Fu.
Those are key concepts.
Yeah.
Patience,
Yeah.
persistence.
Patience and persistence, two major ingredients. You're lacking one? No. That's why in the temple, Sifu Wilson, I'm still continue. There's a lot of people want to learn Kung Fu. They come in, they make some inquiries, and I had an interview with them. The first thing I'm looking into the person is, does he have the patience? Means, does he really understand about the concept of time? Yeah.
Yeah, it seems when you're younger, you have, in terms of time, you have so much more to look forward to. But as you age and you get more mature, you realize you have a lot more to look back on in terms of your accomplishments and what you did with your actual time.
Yes.
So that time of looking forward gets a little bit shorter than the time looking backwards, whereas for a younger person, they have much more to look forward to.
Yeah. It is so true though. That's so true. That's why, not to joke about this, if you really seriously looking for a Sifu, has a lot to do with it, because he has his experience and wisdom behind him. There's a big difference between a 30 years old Sifu and a 70 years old Sifu.
Seems like so much of that is lost today.
Yep.
In terms of the respect for age
and
the people's time and experience.
Yeah. That's all about something to do with our Western culture too though. But in Kung Fu training itself, it's its own culture, its own way. You see the respect. And a good example is that you being a university professor, you understand. And also, you are an instructor in the Lao Kino temple. You can feel the student's respect to you. It's different. You can sense it, you can feel it. Why? Because, there's the Kung Fu has this traditional, the time, the effort. But it's sad to say, even a kid even a student from university, they don't have the respect. I wouldn't say they totally don't disregard the respect, but they see it in a very different perspective.
So it seems to me that time and alongside health, of course, seems to be our most valuable assets.
Yeah. And then we will refer back to the training, and that any particular technique in our temple, there's a very famous technique, such as the simple thing is a Qigong healing technique, such as the internal, the Tai Chi Tuisao in the push, such as the hot style in the iron palm, and the Honga and the Shaolin triple sweeps, and the shirtless kick, and all those things. It takes time. All that individual that I mentioned, it probably take a lifetime. Yeah.
How would you relate that to a setting if time is, Kung Fu is ongoing? How do you reconcile that with the idea of, okay, I'm going to set this goal of getting, let's say you want to get your red sash or pass this test. So
that's a very good question. That's a very good question. With my almost a lifetime effort, to try to perfecting the art. First of all, you just have to change your mindset. Remember, there's no such thing as destination and finish. The destination or the end of training in itself is the training itself. That means the training and the practice will never stop. It doesn't matter you're 20 or 90. It's an ongoing process. So what does that mean? That means that you really have to have, what I always said, this is the 3 P's in order to perfecting the Kung Fu technique. You need persistence, you need patience, and you need passion. And with all these ingredients together, set up something called the discipline. In a certain point in time, after practicing Kung Fu, like myself, 40, 50 years, you still feel that, still a lot of things to learn. I'm still walking. The perspective and the mindset is so important. We need to totally forget about, okay, I'm getting a black belt now. I'm setting goals now, because there's no stopping. There's no end, in other words. The end is that practice. To say, I'm not saying that setting those goals is no good. It is, to a certain extent. But after you reach a certain goal, for instance, yourself, you did very well. You achieved the A level in the Tai Chi and the Blue Sash, which is one of the highest honor of the temple. And I'm sure deep inside you still feel that you still got a long way to go. That's the mindset. Yeah, it's not the end of it. As a matter of fact, it's far from it. But setting goals is good.
Yeah, there seems to be something in the beginning. It seems important. You have these milestones you want to make. Then after a while, you realize, I realized this is that those things, at a certain point, they don't matter.
You can cut it, right? I totally can understand that part of it, and that's why it's not a bad thing to set a goal, and it's not a bad thing inside you're thinking about a certain part, or with Westerners, call destination, because there's no constant. The problem about that in Kung Fu training, there's no destination. I don't really know what the destination is, because every day I get up, like you and I both know, we got to start training now.
Yeah, I think, for the beginner, those are like special markings and milestones for them, especially if they're new to the whole culture of Kung Fu. Then once you get to those markers, you realize, there's so much more. There's so much more time I need to put into this.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was a way of saying how much more work I needed to do. And after a while, you realize you start to set your own internal ideas. So just to sum up, time is persistence, patience, and a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
A lot of work, a lot of focus.
Yeah, it's a lot of focus. And just what I said earlier, Kung Fu, it's just like a bottle of fine wine. When I talk to the Westerners, it matures with time. You cannot hurry Kung Fu, just like you cannot hurry that. If the bottle of wine was from 1800, it is from 1800. You cannot just make a bottle of wine, hope that it will have the same thing, just like the bottle, start with 1800.
So, to sum up, is there anything you want to tell the listener who may be interested in this Kung Fu, anything they should keep in mind about the concept of time?
Yeah, good, because that's what I said before. Actually, the word Kung Fu in Chinese actually means time and effort. Has nothing to do with fighting, has nothing to do with anything. It's just a discipline itself, it's Kung Fu. Yeah. And that's why so many times people say, I don't really doesn't need a whole lot of Kung Fu though, in Chinese saying. That means, doesn't need to take a lot of time.
Gives you a
Yeah, perspective, yeah, to understand, yeah. And the wisdom of Kung Fu and is very deep. And time and effort is endless. Sum it up.
On that note, Sifu, thank you very much for your time, and we'll continue our discussion.
Absolutely, we're looking forward. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.